that, we'll now start with our first keynote, although I think we got some great information from the folks here already. This first one's a technical presentation, competing on analytics, a technology perspective. And we have Larry Weber, who's the director for the Analytics Platform Services at IBM. In other words, this is in the cloud. And so when I first met him, one of his first questions to me is, is Wayne State doing anything in the cloud? And I said, absolutely. And I'm not going to read his introduction to you because it's in here and I know you can all read. Let's just get right to it. Here is Larry Weber.
Thank you so very much. Awesome. Good morning, everyone. Hi, my name is Larry Weber with IBM. I'm very excited to be here. It's been a number of years, but I spent a number of actually 2-3 years in Toledo, Ohio. I was working there doing, it was basically for a manufacturing company. We were making aluminum tubes, and I had just gotten out of graduate school in computer science. And one of the things we were looking at, we had at least other companies around the world, and we made tubes for swedging. We swedged the aluminum tubes to a taper, and many of the business parts were power curves and turns. Think checkout counters, think material handling systems in big organizations. I was there right out of graduate school, computer science, thinking, hey, I'm going to change the world. And all of a sudden I was doing sysadmin work. And I'm like, I'm not sure I enjoy this anymore. I was sitting in the lab and I was building things and building triple DES algorithms. I was loving this. And then all of a sudden I was, wow, I'm just here. One of the things that led as we were building out through this company and working through the manufacturing systems, I had a real love for the processes that were going on there. And one thing led to another. We realized that we wanted to, one of our customers actually made softball bats. And we decided, let's put a business plan together. Let's start taking a look at what if we made our own softball bats. And within, I would say 6-month period, we put together our own brand. I don't know if anyone ever heard of it. It was called Toledo Sports Equipment for a couple of years. We made real high-end softball bats. But we ended up selling that company off. But a couple things happened when I was in that process when we were working through this. The first thing was, we built our own e-commerce system. We were going to sell these things online. This was 2002. I built this myself. And I got to tell you, what a pain it was to build an e-commerce system back then. You want to take a credit card transaction? I had to call Fifth Third Bank and actually ask them permission, get them to come on site, get me a certificate. It was a pain. It was an utterly different perspective than what I'm going to be talking about here today. And that's what, 2000, 2003, 2004, a little over 10 years ago. The world has totally changed. And I'm very excited to be here to talk to you about some things that we're doing at IBM. When I was talking about Boo before about coming here, what are some things I want to talk about? Well, I'm going to go through and speak to you what I'm seeing in the field and some trends here. I'll give you a little bit more of a background on what I do at IBM in a second, but I'm going to go through the top 3 trends and what I'm seeing, okay, and what I'm hearing. And it can be as casual as we want here. And I do want to see if I can have some time at the end for Q&A if people have questions on what's going on. I then want to talk through some client examples, right? What are some people really doing with this technology? How is it going for us in IBM? And then share with you a little bit what we're doing here. I'm a product person. I love product. I like getting in the trenches with product. I like building things, okay? And normally I would come in here and be like, let's talk product. I'm going to walk you through the latest 3 things that we came out with. I'm going to hold that off, okay? I really want to be able to talk through what's happening in this environment and what we're hearing and what we're seeing. So real quick, a little bit about me and what I do at IBM. I've been at IBM for about 10 years now. Oh, geez, almost 10 years. It was one of those things in which I thought, hey, I'll do a couple of years and then go somewhere else. But the way it is the company is, there's so much stuff going on. There's so many different levels of technology. I came into the company doing data warehousing. I was handed an offering called the BCU, or the Balanced Configuration Unit. It was a blueprint to build a data warehouse. It was unbelievably the hardest thing to market, right? It's a blueprint. It doesn't exist. You have to go build it yourself. We worked together, created our first line of data warehouse appliances called the Balanced Warehouse, ultimately called Smart Analytics System. And I'd worked away the company, different areas. I'd worked in business development, embedding software into our business partners. And then for a couple of years, I managed our big data portfolio. And that was a new technology coming out at the time I can get into a little bit more, was Hadoop and IBM's offering around Hadoop. For the last number of years, I've been really focused on 2 things. I've been focused on the cloud and getting our content, our products ready for cloud. And the other aspect has been working on strategy. and looking and listening to the marketplace and seeing what people are doing. How can we relate? How can we build out? How can we grow? So I want to talk through 3 top trends I'm seeing. Open source, cloud, and then rise of this new builder. And so you might be saying here, okay, open source, that's like so yesterday, right? I mean, think about it, open source a long time ago. I'm thinking in graduate school when Linux was around, how many floppy disks did I load in? I'd load in some Linux system. It was like 15 or 14 floppy disks. It was an utter pain. And the system not necessarily didn't even work. Open source has changed drastically now. I'm going to get into that and talk through our view on that. Cloud is another, and that's a big one. But I want to talk less about cloud existing for the sake of cloud, but what cloud is doing and what it means to you. And the last one here is this rise of the new builder. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, and this is something that I'm seeing, I would say, over the past 6 months. Due to some of the technology that's happening and going on around us, there's a phenomenon. And y'all might actually know what's going on. You might have seen it. You might be a part of it. For me, coming in from the outside, seeing this and interacting, it's phenomenal. So talking through open source here, right? A lot of people would say, IBM, what are you doing talking about open source? You have so much proprietary code. You have all these patents. I want to try to convince you otherwise and talk to you about what we're doing in open source, but also let's talk about the environment first. So I'm stealing really blatantly from O'Grady's book, The Software Paradox. Anyone here ever read that book, The Software Paradox? Okay, if you haven't read it, it's an awesome book about the state of the software industry. I want to talk you through a little bit of history here. Let's get some context into what we're talking about. Now let's go back and look at different valuations of software, how software has changed from the beginning of time. Now let's go to the first generation. This would be the existing old mainframes, hardware systems. Software was kind of an afterthought. Software really allowed that hardware to work, and most of the meat and everything, the value on the system was in the hardware. And that happened for many years, and yes, IBM, we were one of the ones hardened in this. All the way throughout 1986, right? And what happened then? Well, the company Microsoft came out, and so Microsoft started talking about the operating system and commoditized the hardware. All of a sudden, the operating system became this area of value. And everyone started saying, oh my gosh, the OS, it's here, and Microsoft is running it, and they're winning it, and it was fantastic. I remember that's when I pretty much came on the scene in computers, right? Because it took something that was like unattainable to me and put on a desktop that I can play with it, and I could do things, play games mostly when I was of the age. But then something else happened, right? The internet, okay? And the idea of the browser. And what did the browser do? Well, the browser opened up a whole new world that didn't lock you down to that Microsoft operating system. So now we have companies like Google. We have others out there that can say, hold on, circumvent the operating system, all you need is a browser, and we can do business there. Now, if you look at the timing there, it's a little bit more short-lived. What happened then? What happened after that 2004 timeframe? Well, all of a sudden, the market started creating companies and business models within and around this browser environment. You didn't need necessarily the hardware. You didn't need that operating system. And this whole world, this new world order, and this kind of 4th generation of software emerged. Now, you really can't make out all the different brands that are in there, but everything from Uber, LinkedIn, all the new generation of software companies, they're increasingly based on open source, right? Why? So let's talk through a couple of names here, and I'm assuming everyone's seen a number of these brands and these logos on the presentation. Like Spark, it's a hot one now, Hadoop, Jupyter Notebooks, CouchDB. These are all examples of open source that are going on today, right? And I'm not going to go do a deep dive on specific areas of this. I know we have the rest of this conference that people are going to be talking about specifics. But I'll give you an example here. In my time with Hadoop, okay, we had just launched, IBM's offering was called Big Insights for Hadoop in the day. And I was at a data warehousing conference. This was years ago. And the title of the theme of the data warehousing conference was Big Data. Okay, cool. So I was presenting on Hadoop and Big Insights, and I said, hey, how many people here heard about Hadoop? Like 2 hands went up in the back. Whoa, okay, I thought we were all together here. I went back 6 months later. How many people here heard about Hadoop? Nearly every hand went up. How many people are implementing it? Half the hands went up. And it was, to me, a phenomenon to say this stuff was coming out. I wasn't really familiar with open source until I was handed the offering around our Big Insights. It was phenomenal to see the pickup and the uptick that people were doing, building into this community and building on top of something that was free, that we could play with, that was given away, that people were sharing IP. Now, another one here we'll talk about, now that's talking through a database or data platform, right, or big data. I mean, there's other ones as well. You think about languages. R's been a big one for us, right? People doing statistical programming, open, right? And we've been trying to do our best embedding that into some of our software. But these are things in which have been growing exponentially, and it's been a phenomenal, phenomenal experience. So let me give you my opinions on this, on why people are adopting open source, right? So first of all, there's a perception that it's lower cost. When you look at some of the older models and people starting up the new internet economy, it was, hey, I don't want to go spend all this extra money on, let's say, a whole new server system, a whole new appliance. It's going to be perceived lower cost. Okay, I can understand that might have been why you opened the door and why you started playing with this. But number two is the big one, right? It's that force multiplier effect. It's the fact that all of a sudden, as an organization, it's open. So it's not just my engineering team. It's your engineering team and their engineering team and others out there for the common good, creating a new environment. It's like I have the engineering teams of everyone and development teams of everyone coming together. And that's awesome. And a lot of people early on were scared about this with IP. Like, hey, I'm not giving away my code. I'll give you an example right now, at least what we're doing. One of our offerings, I had a developer advocate. So developer advocates for my team, they're almost like data ninjas. Their only job in life, not marketing, not sales, is to help people out solving their business problems. And one of them came up, people were trying to access Salesforce data and pull it into one of our databases. Their entire life is around solving a problem and then giving it away. That's today, okay? And so they created something that was called a simple data pipe. It's essentially taking data from Salesforce data and then bringing it into any sort of database or data warehouse. And then they opened it up and they said, market, have at it. Go play with it, it's yours. And so all of a sudden people are building connectors into Stripe and into other areas as well. I just want to share that as one example of how open source is coming together, even outside of the actual database itself and the data systems, but open source in general, the facilities, the code, the programs. Now, another aspect here is this idea of reduced risk, right? And I have the tombstone there because one of the things, being in a big company and seeing many other companies start up and then go away, right? Either they fail or they get acquired. Or once they're acquired, someone says, okay, we're getting rid of this and we're phasing it out. One of the ideas with open source is it exists. There's persistence. It's not going away. All right? Its life cycle is based on what people are really, the market value of it and what people are adding into it. And that's a big deal, right? If you're going to bet on something, think about it, something like Spark or Hadoop, it's going to be there for a period of time. You're not dependent on, no offense, IBM or Oracle or other companies that are out there. You're dependent on that community and that base of intellectual excellence that's building into that realm of open source. And I put here a quote, and this was actually from one of the last OSCON, one of the O'Reilly open source conferences. It was a quote, I love it. It comes from Facebook. And it's really, by sharing our code, our stack, and in some cases even our hardware designs, we think that other companies and individuals are just able to move faster. Far from this being a competitive threat, we find this value accrues back to us. And I've got to be honest with you, that's our view as well. We're seeing this open source movement as phenomenal across all fronts. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So I bring this one out separately. People here familiar with NoSQL? Okay, so I almost had this as a separate section, and this one's near and dear to my heart as being in cloud data services. NoSQL really came out of, a lot of different names for it. Some people say, no, it's NoSQL, it doesn't have any SQL, or people say not only SQL. It was originally, I think the name came up, Carlos Strozzi in 2008 created a database that was not using SQL and came up with it. It has nothing to do with the NoSQL movement as it is. A year later, there was a meetup that was put together in California, and someone wanted to hear more at one of these Hadoop conferences about other technology and open source projects that are going on, and looked up this word and said, NoSQL, that sounds great, put it up there so people could find it on Twitter, different hashtags, and it was kind of born from there. The best way to say it is, okay, people are building new programs, new code, new software, and there's a whole lot of databases that exist today. Hey, we have DB2. I've managed DB2 before. We have Oracle, you have Microsoft, you have others. It's traditional relational databases off the shelf. They're not necessarily made for building new software. They're not necessarily made for running applications on all the time, okay? And so what happened was in this open source community, people started building their own databases. This is not working for me. I need something that's going to be able to access data faster. I want a key value pair. I want some social media. I want graph databases. And so this whole NoSQL movement, primarily open source, but not necessarily, came out around this data types. And here I just kind of grouped a couple of these together, different things between document data stores, column family, key value, and graph. This is not limiting to these four, but these are some of the main ones that we see today. From an IBM perspective, we're using pretty much all of these because in our role is we're talking to people that are building out software and building out code. I don't want to limit them, okay? So people are asking, what's going to work best with what I want to do? And the open source community is open so wide that people can grab what they want. A great one, actually one big area that's growth that I've seen is the document data stores, like NoSQL, JSON document data stores. Think about this, and then we'll get in a second, but talking about the rise of the mobile phone, right? And becoming your own computer and having all this great information and content around it. Internet of Things, web pages. I mean, all this documentation to do it, and you want to talk big data, right? Well, think about massive amounts of people hitting your web page, hitting your phone, hitting your device. You know, what are you going to do every single time, drop that into a relational database? No, right? You're going to store it as a JSON document and push it off, and then worry about that later on. And there's a lot of development in this area, actually taking it so you can take these JSON documents and pull this data back in and study it for analysis. Oh, and this is just a point here. Usually, some commonalities around this, I mean, they're based in open source, as I mentioned. The last point is really important. I just want to drive this home. Designed for the modern web and REST APIs. This is what I said in that last fourth quadrant of software valuation and these new companies, these new business models. It's web-based, right? It's thin, it's light. And we need that access and open access, so it's not just, when we talk about the force multiplier in open source, we need more people to build on top of it. We need an ecosystem to actually drive it. Not so it's my piece of software, it's our software because it's greater, because we've all built into this. And that's a big deal for open source, and that's a big deal for NoSQL. All right, so I gave you a quick overview on open source and started touching a little bit on where we're headed here. The next one I want to go into is cloud, all right? I know cloud, people are probably like overwhelmed, like way too much cloud, cloud, cloud. All marketing every day is cloud. I want to briefly go through this and talk through some specific workloads and what we're seeing within the cloud marketplace. So I was actually presenting at another conference, and it was a data warehousing conference as well. And I said, okay, you know, how many people here doing data warehousing on the cloud? Or even touching the cloud? It was about a room of 55 people. And one person raised their hand. Are you kidding me? Out of all you people here, and this was last year, end of last year, one person's going into the cloud? It's like, no, hold on a second. Are you guys leveraging web page data? Do you guys have mobile devices? Do you guys have applications? That's cloud, right? And they had different perceptions on what cloud was and how to access it and how to best do it. And I found that a lot of people were actually sitting there with their websites that were out there. It could be their business platform. They're bringing all of that data in to analyze it into their on-premise system rather than keeping it where it is. Talk about quality of service issues right then and there. Right? That's a problem. And so talking through this, you know, I wanted to get this on the screen to show you, like, what's a common definition of cloud, right? Simply is the cloud delivery of on-demand computing resources, everything from applications to data centers over the internet on a pay-for-use basis. And there's all different kinds, right? But let's cast that wider net for now as we're talking through this. It's not just about the cloud and throw everything you have on-premise into the cloud. It's a hybrid world, okay? Now, if you're lucky enough today to be like, hi, I'm coming out of college, I don't have that many resources, I want to build a new company, start in the cloud, great. I don't have to worry about hardware, depreciation, about anything like that. I can go and play and build and grow. Awesome. But then you have the vast majority of the organizations that exist today, you got stuff on premises, right? You have data you've been accruing for years. Now the cloud, you want me to go push this out there? Well, hold on. Yeah, we're not trying to say that. You're actually in a better position because you have all that data, right? And you can do with it. You can leverage it. It's the idea, though, of use the cloud for what the cloud's done best, okay? You have digital data, you have mobile data, you have mobile devices. How do you access that? How do you play with that? Should you keep that in the cloud? Why are you bringing it in-house to analyze it? Would you rather keep it out there? And so you start thinking through this process of this hybrid world, and it's not one size fits all. Just a quick quote from Gartner, right, talking through 2020. The most common use of cloud services will be hybrid model. And I would say that over the next couple of years, this is going to be one of the hottest areas. A lot of it's buzzword now. Hey, hybrid, it just means we have cloud and on-premise and we're doing two different things. But you're going to see this become seamless, right? To a point in which you're not going to know if it's on cloud or on-premise in many ways, shapes, and forms unless you really want to. This is just a quick quote. It's funny from an IBM perspective. We have put out a lot of our own research studies. We're a big company, and we have a lot of different research groups. In 2013, this was put out, the statement, 72% of business leaders say the cloud will be vital to their success by 2016. I would say that that is true. I would say it might be even a little bit higher. Every single discussion I've had, probably since the beginning of this year, has been somewhat related to cloud in some way, shape, or form. So, and this is an eye chart, I apologize, and this is one I actually stole from the larger IBM. But just to show you and walk through, like, what are some workloads, right, that are ready for cloud, if you're thinking about it. Well, right up front, a couple of the big ones, right? Talked about it. You do mobile, e-commerce, you're doing any type of collaboration, web page, web business. That's all in the cloud. That's no-brainer, right? You're already playing with it there. But you're looking at some other areas, too, is like one that's really popped up, test dev, right? I mean, that was a big one for a lot of the cloud taking off early on. If you're a consulting firm, why the heck are you going to go bring in all this great databases and data stores and then do it in-house and have to roll it out? Just use the cloud and then turn it off when you're done and pay for what you use. It was much more affordable. Organizations are doing that as well, right? Being able to roll up instances in the cloud and then shut them down as needed and not have to worry about connecting with IT every 5 minutes. But the next wave really coming to this is a lot of it's disaster recovery, looking at a lot of storage is one aspect. But as we get into more of an ecosystem, right, we're dealing with third parties. I mentioned Salesforce. I mentioned Stripe data. You and your partners and others are going to have data, third-party data stores that could be coming off devices or be coming in from, let's say, the parties themselves. How do you bring this in? How do you analyze it? You want to talk 360 view of a customer. Okay, you might have awesome data in-house, but I bet you any money you're going to want some of that Twitter data. You're going to want some of that social media data to start looking at differences. How about mapping data? How about weather data? Those are all based where? In-house? No, they're in the cloud. And so that's one of the things about talking through a hybrid scenario is how do you do that processing and where do you do it? I mean, I know if I was an insurance company, I sure would love to know the weather patterns that are going on in my region because then I can start thinking, okay, how do I fight this? What's going to be up next? Where do my rates go? There's a whole slew of things coming, okay? And this is where taking a really close look at your organization and looking at what do you have today in the cloud or not in the cloud, start thinking through where that data lies and where it should be done best, where it should be processed best. Now, sure, there are things in which some folks are never going to put to cloud, and there's some things in which, hey, for security reasons, legal reasons, totally understood. High transaction throughputs that are inside the organization as well. They might not be ready, but start thinking about it, start mapping it through. And so this is just a disclaimer of kind of two frames of thought here, right? You have on the left-hand side the idea of this hybrid approach, right? You can leverage the cloud to scale. You can leverage the cloud to grow a little bit. You hit the wall. Hey, my system's not big enough, right? My footprint's not there. Okay, I can expand. I have another database or data warehouse, whatever it may be, application in the cloud I can use. Great, okay? That's one aspect. The right-hand side is cloud-centric, right? And this is the world in which it's going to expand and contract really quick is your elastic aspects. This is where you have the emerging markets. This is where you have the emerging, not just workloads, but business models that can exist there and remain there. And your entire business can be out in that realm as well. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the new frontier and organizations tying into that and seeing where they can go. So this one's here is a summary chart. And the key thing here is that first item on the top. It's the most number one thing I've seen and probably the most important. The number one reason to adopt cloud is not cost savings. It's agility, okay? I'll get into the story in a little bit, but I offering and managed last year came aboard. It's called DashDB. Essentially, it's a cloud data warehouse for IBM. We took DB2, our columnar technology, and then we mixed it with our integrated analytics, put it together, put it in the cloud. And watching this as it first came out, I was like, geez, you know what's going to be awesome? This is cheap. I don't have to go buy an appliance, right? People are going to buy this because it's cost effective, it's easy. No. All right, the number one reason, this blew my mind, was that the company, well, it was actually one of our first clients at this period of time for that, they had just merged, they acquired another company, and they had to get data out right away, and they had to show some results from this. And their IT department was like, hey, hold on, these are incompatible systems, we're not talking together. And the other one's like, we don't have funding here to go buy a new system. Their big thing right now was, we need to get this done today. IBM, can you help us with this? And the first thing, within 2 weeks, we went out there, rolled up a system for them so that they were able to combine their systems from, it was basically in Germany, in the US, and in Canada, bringing this all together. It was a major pharmaceutical organization. And for them, it was, oh my gosh, you did this in 2 weeks. We don't care what it costs. This is unbelievable. We wouldn't have been able to do this. That's inherently different because this would have taken us like 6 weeks plus, even if we had the resources in-house and we didn't. And so that's the number one thing. Okay. Now, of course, there is an issue with cost. Hey, you have different CapEx versus operational expenses. That's always something to consider. Depreciation, value, all that kind of goodness. Scalability, market adaptability, max complexity. That's a big one. And if I have time at the end, I'll take you through a little bit of what we're working on. Managed services. Okay. Think about the idea of the cloud in which it's not this pain in which I have to roll my whole instance. I have to learn everything about it. It's there. All you have to do is load data into it. If you know how to access data into it, it'll maintain that database for you. Ecosystem connectivity. And I'd say that's a big one that's growing as well. And I would say for everyone to be aware of that. As I said before, is you have these third parties and data stores that you want to tap into for analytics. Yeah, they're in the cloud. And make sure that your own systems internally and externally, the ones you're working with, are going to be compatible and are going to be the latest and the greatest on those different interfaces. So, and then here's the third one here. The other trend is this rise of the new builder. And I said this is near and dear to my heart. I had worked probably for the last couple of years within data science and data warehousing, IT architecture type view. Over the past year, I've worked a lot more with the builders and developers. Okay, those people that are building applications on top of our software or in software in general. Totally different market, right? I walked in here today and first thing I was going to say is I'm not used to wearing a suit, right? I'm used to seeing hoodies and sharing code online. But this is phenomenal, this one here, because it's not dedicated to just the developer. Think about what we've talked about already. We've talked about open source, talked about cloud, things coming together and things moving forward. You think about the fourth view of that software evaluation and those companies that are there. What are the limits? Where are things going? What are people doing today? How fast are companies popping up left and right? And this idea of the new builder really comes from people being empowered to do things. And I mentioned in the beginning when I was doing the e-commerce site for the baseball bat business in Toledo, it was an utter pain. Oh my gosh, I got to tell you, it took weeks to even get the software on site and build this stuff. Oh, it was horrible. It's a great learning experience, but horrible. Now, you just get an iPad, all right? Start flaying things around, and you have instant services you can go build with, right? You have services at your fingertips that now you do not need to go ask permission. You can just swipe your credit card, many times not even swipe a credit card, and you already have languages, databases, data stores, methods, programs, anything you want. And this is moving fast. And who is to decide, right? Who gets to do this and who doesn't? Documentation's getting better. The way we're doing business is getting better. And what I've seen is a massive movement here where we have this crew of army of people, all ages, all different regions of the world, building things, doing things. So who are these new builders, right? The first one, obviously, are the developers, okay? These are the people building applications on the web, on mobile devices, right? I still wish I had free time to actually get up to speed. I got to tell you, the one thing I love about my job is the fact that I have access to all this information. The worst thing is I have no time to do anything anymore. I haven't coded in, years now, and to the point that I just to keep up with this stuff, I'm like right there. The developers are leading the charge. They're the ones who are helping build out open source areas. They're helping to showcase what can be done. But there's another one as well, right? And it's the idea of the data scientists and kind of the citizen analysts. The software is getting, well, the math isn't necessarily getting easier, but the software is getting better. It's getting smarter. Things like from an IBM perspective, like Watson Analytics, okay? Things in which it's going to do some cognitive work for you ahead of time and helping people out who might not call themselves a data scientist, but after a couple of months, they will be. And people that are looking into trends and looking into numbers. And all of a sudden, it's easier to get access to better software and to get access to better data. We're seeing this grow as well. And from my perspective, I have a focus really on people building, okay? It's a blurred line between developers and data scientists. I got to be honest with you. A lot of people are both. IT architects, this is one some people laughed at, and they're like, what, IT architects, they're not going to be dealing with this. Well, now you have cloud data warehouses, okay? Well, what does that do for you? How does it help your job out? How does it help your life out? And as the software gets easier and the analytics get easier, more and more people who might have been hands-off are getting hands-on. And they have got an insane amount of information and intelligence in their respective area. And now you've just opened that door in which they're tinkering around, they're playing, they're building, and they're adding to this mess, or mix, not mess. And they're helping the rest of the organization out. And this is where shadow IT and everything starts popping out. Everyone becomes one of these new builders. The last one here, a lot of people forget about, right? The entrepreneurs. I've got an idea. I want to build something. I want to go somewhere. I have a choice. I can go hire an army of people, or I can do it myself. And we're getting to the point now with cloud data services in general that anyone here, any one of you, can go online right now today. I used to do it in a closer environment. It was like, I'm going to show you physically what you can do. You want to ingest Twitter feeds and look at them right away? Do it for free right now. I'm going to show you in 5 minutes. It's all done. It's all available today. And everyone can start tinkering and playing with this stuff. And the entrepreneurs, I would say, is a massive growing movement that people that might not even have a tech background, they're jumping into programs like this saying, computer science, tell me more. I don't have a background here, tell me more. And this has been growing and building out this giant repository of these new builders. And here's another Gartner 2016 predictions quote, right? By 2020, 60% of all fast mode application development projects will be done outside of formal IT teams, driven by the rise of citizen developers. This is what I'm seeing, and this is insane. This is great, but it's a lot to keep up with. The whole world is now getting hands-on and playing and building and tinkering, and it's a phenomenon that's awesome, because the stuff that's coming out on the other side is great. So I want to go through a couple of quick scenarios, kind of how we in IBM, we're talking to some of our clients. I can burn through a couple of these. The first one here is a company, and this one's actually from this year. Talk how fast things go. There's a company in New England, insurance company, and they were regional to Massachusetts, and they wanted to expand. Their issue was they had all on-premise systems, and they wanted to grow. They wanted to take the next step, but they couldn't. They had some regulations. They had to go. It was basically they were doing an exercise. They had two problems. They had no room to grow. They had already using one of our. It's typical. It was an IBM customer. They were using one of our hardware appliances, and they needed to scale, but they didn't have necessarily funding and they didn't have the resources to extend it in their data center. And so they started talking to us like, how do we do this? And at that time, we had just come out with our offering DashDB, which I said was a data warehouse in the cloud. And they said, sure, let's have a talk about this, where things go. And the way that they did it, and here's give you a little bit of an architecture on this, they wanted to leverage it as for disaster recovery. And they were actually running Cognos Analytics right on this system that was in the cloud. And DashDB, one of the cool things about it, in my opinion, embedded analytics. So the analytics from Netezza, if you remember old Netezza, Pure Data for Analytics system, that analytics system is now embedded into our software in the cloud. So you can do and bring your analytics and then do it there. And that's a big deal, right? Rather than having to suck massive amounts of data in and store it and then play with it, you can do it in the cloud, right? Do the analytics where the data resides. Also the fact that we've integrated R. So if anyone's using R, whatever like that, you can actually go and query and play with the data as it is in that cloud data warehouse on the fly. They were a Cognos customer, and they were leveraging the dashboards analytics based on this, doing a lot of playing around, and it was one of those things, right? You have tinker builders that you start growing and start, whoa, this is great. More and more people in the organization started playing around and using it. They're like, we need this. And so actually their long-term approach is they want to replace their existing system, which isn't necessarily the number one answer we wanted, but they're going to replace it with our DashDB offering. So they're going to go full cloud for at least this data warehousing process. So that's one example of kind of data warehouse modernization in which people have a lot of on-prem systems, and they're tapping into the cloud to get a little bit more nimble. Now, this one's a little bit different. This is pretty much all digital and all cloud. A company called Cabify. Right after Uber came out, there's a lot of fast followers. Cabify is a company that's based out of Spain, and it was a startup. A number of entrepreneurs came together, and they said, let's focus on what people want in this market. And it was more the kind of limousine, chauffeured, high-end cab drivers. And they wanted to create an app very similar to Uber that did this. And they actually, as they started expanding throughout Madrid and other places in Spain, they started hitting Latin America, South America. Big issue there was they were using, and they were built on open source, they were using CouchDB to handle all those transactions, all those workloads. And what happened was CouchDB as an open source project, they couldn't maintain it anymore. They were having issues in-house with this. And so they actually talked to us, and one of our offerings, Cloudint, is essentially our version of CouchDB in the cloud, and started leveraging that so they could extend and they could expand. And this is the idea of having a managed service. Their benefit to them was, hey, we got nothing on premises, all cloud. Let's move out. And so they wanted to actually move to Cloudant to do all the processing there, to keep that as a JSON data store. That would mean there's stuff coming in from mobile devices, from web pages, high volume. Let's bring it into something, we keep hands off, save us the time, but still be able to interact with other open source projects they had going on, Elasticsearch and Redis being two of them. Redis specifically is an open source area. When they would have spikes in the amount of people that were going through, they would use Redis to offload that data first before dropping it in the Cloudant. Now the third one here is an American discount airline company that was leveraging a number of different systems in place to take real-time orders. Here's where they wanted to take orders online from web and mobile applications, but also analyze that stuff in real time. And they're hitting a wall. They were leveraging some other open source technology as well as some more traditional relational database management systems. And they wanted to be able to get better leveraged with their analysts to start looking at the data in real time and then making better decisions on it. In their situation here, they also use Cloudant as a JSON data store because it was managed and it can handle all these transactions quickly and effectively. But there's also a cool thing here with Cloudant and some of the technology that we have with both DB2 and without DashDB. And not to get too producty here, but one of the things in IBM, when we take the open source, we take even stuff that's not open source like DB2, we wanted to make sure that there were connections and there's a seamless layer here. So we built into Cloudant this idea of schema discovery. Okay, JSON documents themselves are pretty much, they're not extra defined, right? It's very difficult to analyze them. And so what we do is we create a program that actually develops the schema based on looking at the document structure himself and then puts it into the database. Okay, so you instantly have an instant data warehouse or an instant database based on these JSON documents. The other thing attached to that is an instant sync. Anytime a new document's formulated, it gets updated in that platform as well. So as more and more people go to the website to go play around and look at airline flights and I'm mixing around, that data is all of a sudden real time being pushed into DB2 and cloud. So the analysts all of a sudden had a real-time view based on JSON documents, which are pretty imperfect for doing real deep analysis. So this is just one other area, and this happened in the last year as well. I know I'm short on time, so let me finish up here. So that's just a couple of ideas and ways people are using it. And these are customers in the last year, I would say. There's a number more as well. And if you like the Cabify one, there's a video on it online talking through it. But a couple of things have happened over the last couple of years. And by the way, I know I didn't touch on Watson. I'm not touching on Watson Analytics so quickly. I mean, 2 years ago, we started getting a lot of accolades for what we've done with Watson and taking Watson as it was in the cognitive world and start bringing that in and start offering it online as composable services. Right? There's pieces of of Watson that anyone here can go play with pretty much for free today as it stands in our online site. That's a piece of it, right? But even the next year, we have a thing, Watson Analytics came out, and all this stuff's brewing, all this stuff's going around cognitive. So this is all goodness. And the reason I'm not focusing on this is because I want to share with you kind of what was happening in the background, specifically with what we've been doing from a cloud perspective. And so 2 years ago, we acquired a company called Cloudant, and Cloudant was the JSON data store I talked about. And over the last 2 years, IBM has made big investments in cloud in a thing called Bluemix. Has anyone here heard about Bluemix before? Okay, great. So Bluemix has become that platform as a service. And over the past 2 years, I would say a year and a half, this platform as a service in the cloud for composable web services has gone from like 0 to 60 wicked fast. It's now become like almost a cloud playground for services, for content, for all these things I'm talking to you about, these new builders, new developers. It's really located and hosted there. And so I talked through a lot of these services, and I really didn't get to the point on what we're doing here from cloud data services. Our division has really been looking at taking databases, taking data stores, taking data warehouses, taking technology, taking analytics, and then putting it as a service in the cloud, tangible, digestible, composable, so that all you need is really an ID, basically an internet address or an email address. You can go log in and roll these things up and go play with them and mix them together. And one of the things is our dedication to open for data. And you might have, it was probably about a month ago, we came out with this Open Data Initiative, but it's around open source, open technology, liberating the data from anywhere it may be. We actually have data stores that you went in, you can go play with, like over 150 of them, public data stores. Go play with them, go add to them, go bring them in and bring them to your company as well. The fact is, we want to take all of this goodness, that technology both inside of IBM as well as outside, and things that you all are building, third-party data, open source data, and make it available to everyone anywhere, so that you can build and grow and do great and cool things. And so just up on the glance on the screen, these are just a couple of our solutions that we offer today. Everything from Spark through Hadoop, through Redis, through Compose. We acquired a company called Compose Enterprise, and we actually create so that you can actually go on and, hey, I don't know what NoSQL database I'm going to need to know or need to use. You can go buy it as basically a buffet license and use what you need when you want to. The fact is, from our perspective, we're building all this. We're taking everything that we can, and we're trying to get it out there because we want to tap into this new growing world of these new builders, these doers, these folks that are taking it to the next level. But the key thing across all of this is making sure that there's a level of integration. I mentioned some of the content from going from Cloud into DashDB or Cloud into our databases, making sure that schema discovery is built in there. It's not just that, right? We want to work with open languages. We want to talk through things like Python and R and make sure that it's seamless across all of our products, so that maybe you've invested in certain stacks or certain technologies that you at a glance can bring your own technology in and then tap into ours where needed. Whether you're a data scientist, whether you're a developer, whether you're an IT architect, it's all there at a glance for you, all right? So with that being said, I kind of pushed it right to the end. I'll do two things real quick. I want to say for more information on any of this, I know it's very easy to get lost at IBM and a lot of different great things that are going on. Give you a web address here for our Open for Data initiative, or go look at IBM Open for Data. A lot of the things I talked about today will be there. About how you can get involved and how you can look and grow through this. And the last one here is Bluemix. If you weren't familiar with it today, it's free to go play with. I think in a lot of our data services, it's freed up to certain levels. Go build, go grow, go have fun with it. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what we're really working on, is helping people really get excited about new data, open data, that anyone and everything can build from. So with that being said, I know I'm up on time. I want to say thank you very much, and I'll be on hand if anyone wants to have discussions later on. Thank you so much.